is in the packaging with the heatsink, there's the little tube of thermal paste. You're going to want to get that. And we're going to apply the thermal paste next. So what you're going to need to do this is you're going to need the little tube, and you should get yourself a piece of cardboard. Rip off a piece of cardboard from the cooler box, like one of the flaps, and you're going to use it almost like a credit card to spread out the thermal paste a little bit. So you just want to use like one of the finished sides to do that. So he asked rice or pea, and what he means by that is when you put the thermal paste on the processor, what shape do you make? Do you make a rice or a pea? So in this case, it doesn't really matter because we're going to spread it out a little bit beforehand, but I tend to do a pea and just spread it out that way. So what I want you to do is first is test Poofy on something, a napkin, a piece of cardboard. You just want to do a little bit, just so you understand how much pressure you have to apply when you're going to put it on. There you go, perfect. So you understand it, all right? So it's warm enough that it's coming out on its own, it's good. You're going to use the cardboard from the center to spread it out.
So this is what I'm putting it on, like literally this right here.
Right on that metal plate. I'm waiting for it to refresh so I can confirm. Yes, that's correct. You're going to put it right on there, right in the center. If you have too much, it's not a big deal because you have the cardboard and you're going to use different pieces to like scrape up extra if there's excess. But you just want to put a good amount. That looks good to me. You use the finished corner, like not the non-tore corner, to kind of spread it out evenly.
Okay.
Yo, that was very well done. Like, let me show you guys this
That looks great.
magnificent art.
That looks really good. You spread it out evenly.
Damn.
You don't want it too thick, and you want it to be where it's just semi-visible through it, where you can just start to make out lettering. You don't want it to be caked on where it's like frosting and you can't see through it, and it's super thick.
I'm gonna need to get a little bit off.
Yeah, you might want to take a clean piece of cardboard and just run it over once to lift up a little bit. You just want a nice, clean, thin layer. And this stuff is not thermally conductive, so if anything should happen to get onto any of the surrounding pieces on the board or anything like that, it's not a big deal, but we want to try to keep it as, clean and neat as possible, that's all.
I feel like we should do this part really fast because it seems like it's already wanting to dry.
No, it doesn't. It looks like it, but it won't dry very fast, so that's okay. I can't. Where are the ports, Kody? It's hard for me to tell right now where they are. Are they facing where Poofy is?
You think about like the sound?
Yes, the
the outputs. The back
are on my side.
Yes, so the fan side has to face Kody.
Oh, so the fan faces the opposite side of the
Correct.
port.
The fan is an intake.
Okay.
It's a fan that's pulling in air and blowing it out the back. So we want all the air in the case to go in one direction. We want all the air to come in through the front of the computer and go out through the back. You want this to go down. You want this to go down nice and even. So you want this to go down so that each screw, you only turn 2 or 3 turns and then move on to the next screw. You don't want to screw down all one side and then move on to the next one. So
It
hold on.
doesn't
So
matter
don't turn
if
those.
the X snaps into place.
It should. That's what I'm saying. So like looking at this picture that I have from the manual here, I got it on the stream right now. These 2 middle pieces should fall into the middle of that block that's sitting right on top of the processor. There should be 2 little pegs sticking out on top of this metal block that this has to fit into.
I'm tapping out.
You tapping out?
Because the screws aren't lining up. It's making the X pop out of its little bitty groove that it's got.
By the way, this part here is one of the hardest parts of the build. After this, everything gets easier.
The issue that it was having was there's a point that sets in to the X. There we go. It's just finding the right alignment. That's the only thing that's kind of throwing it off. It's going to take a second.
I just saw you drop it in. I just saw it drop in. Poofy, can you lift the camera up so I can see above the heatsink? I just want to make sure it's on straight. It looks like it might be a little crooked.
It's going to bend. It's bracing it in. This thing is going to be sitting sideways.
But it doesn't look like
you
the
have
knobs.
No, he's absolutely right. You have to use a screwdriver and push down and apply pressure to get those screws in once you get one in.
This is my predicament right
now. Okay.
Some of the screws are pretty much lining up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then the other one is off.
So what you should be able to do is spread the X a little bit more to get that to fit, right?
Yeah, but then it would be unclicked. Like it wouldn't be clicked into place because it does click. Like
so can you do me a favor? Can you go over the top again so I can see how those screws are positioned? So here's your problem. This is your problem. Mm-hmm. The screws that you have in the 4 corners, they can move. You have them in the wrong position. You need to move them into the centers. You need to move them into the center position. Drop them down.
I see it now. yay.
Yeah, that was the issue. Sorry, I couldn't tell from the camera angle. The mount that comes with this bracket, right? It's adjustable. It's needed. It's usable for both Intel processors and AMD processors. And because of that, it has different configurations for different types of CPU sockets. So what happened was her CPU socket needs it to be in the center spot. The screws on each one of these corners can be adjusted. And each one of these screws needs to be in the center spot to fit the socket that Poofy has. What happened was she had it in a different configuration for a different socket, and because of that, the screws weren't lining up when she went to go screw them in. So now she adjusted it, and now it's fitting properly.
I feel like we should be further along than this.
Nah, that cooler, like I told you, it's complicated. So, I think we're doing all right so far. Now we got the CPU, we got the cooler. What we should do is probably put in the memory now. Some motherboards have only one clamp that moves. Some of them have both that move. So what I want you to do is just put your thumb on top of one of those slots on both of those things and just push them outward, like down and to the left and to the right, and they should shift. One of them should shift, or both of them should shift. Tell me which it is.
Both.
Both of them. Okay. The one that's on the left is number one. So one from the left is one.
Closest to the fan is one.
Yes. And then the one that's closest to that plug on the black plug on the right is 4. So you're gonna open up 2 and 4.
Does it matter which card goes in which one?
No, but they have to go in a certain way. But either or can go into either slot. Pretend my phone is the memory. This is the memory stick. You want to hold it like this. You want to pinch it from the tops of where the metal is on the sides. So your fingers are holding it on the corners. Does that make sense? Hang on. On the bottom is a little notch. That notch is not perfectly center. So you want to put that notch and line it up with the slot. So find out which way it goes. If it's the wrong way, just turn it around and it'll go the other way. If you look at the motherboard slot, you'll see where it lines up. That looks correct. I can see the notch. So you're going to slide it straight down, and then from the tops now, on both ends, you're going to push straight down. You are now prepared to put your motherboard officially inside of your computer. You pretty much have everything. You're pretty great now. So all we got to do is we just got to take those screws that you have, and you're going to put the motherboard into the case and mount it. The way you're going to do this, though, is you're gonna again ground yourself by keeping your arm or your hand on the case, and you're gonna lift the motherboard by itself, not with the bag, not with the box, with 2 hands. You want to put one hand supporting it on the bottom, near the back where all the ports are, like the back of the computer, which is the side that is currently facing Kody. And the other hand, you want to hold the radiator and the fan, because now that's mounted to the board. That's a pretty good spot to hold it, but you don't want to like yank on it. You just want to use it for support, really. You know what I mean? Really, you want all the weight to rest on your hand from the bottom. That's the important part. You're kind of just balancing it from with your other hand. Okay. Now you're going to take...
So shift like that whenever you put it in there.
Yep. So now you're going to take...
all of these points right here?
Yep. You're going to put it in on an angle. And you're going to try to put the ports on the back into that plate that you put in the back of the case first. That's the first thing you want to do. So really, we've only been doing this for about 2 hours and 2.5 hours, because you guys started a little bit between 8:30. So you've been really making good time so far. This is not bad at all. You want to look where those 8 holes are that you're lining up. The middle one should already be lined up, and that peg should be poking through that middle hole. The other 8, if you look towards the front of the case where your right hand is, you should be able to see the copper through the hole where you have to put the screw through. The ones that you showed me, I thought that they were these down here, E. They looked like they were flat on top. Maybe I was wrong, but that's what it looked like. The ones you want are the round ones like this, the D ones, Delta. This is ideally what you guys want, is what they're showing right here. See these? You got the copper standoffs, all metal, not plastic. You got plastic washers. These washers are actually not rubber, they're plastic. And these are great because motherboards back in the day didn't used to have grounding points around the screws. So you see how these screws here, where you got to mount these, you see how they have like the star shape around them? Those are ground points. So if the screw touches any of that metal, it's not going to cause any sort of short in the board. It's not going to short out the board at all. It's not going to cause any problems. One of the cables that you brought that came with the motherboard is a SATA cable. It's like a little square, maybe a 1/2 inch wide. Almost looks like a USB cable. Yeah, that looks like it. So what you want to do is take one of those, and you're going to hook it up to one of the ports on the motherboard. Which one, we're going to have to find out. So let's see. Looking at the ports here, you can see that they're numbered. So the one that's on the bottom that is facing up is the primary. So they're in the bottom right-hand corner of the motherboard. If you look at the picture here, the memory is up top, and they're towards the bottom. There's 6 of them. So 4 of them are facing out, 2 of them are facing up. The other end of that is going to go to your hard drive. So what you want to do is run that wire from where you are now to under the bottom of the case where we're going to put the power supply and the hard drive. It's got 1 CPU fan, 4 system fans, and then a fan for a water pump if you had a water pump system. CPU fan is going to be the one that's directly up and to the right of the CPU socket, right over here by the memory. So what I want you to do is look for that and see if you see it say CPU fan 1 right there.
Yeah, I see.
So that's it. So you're going to take that wire that comes from the fan that you got on the on the radiator, and you're going to plug it into there. It can only go in one way. You can use sysfan 2, you can use sysfan 1, you can use sysfan 3. Whichever one is easiest for you to get to and to route the wires.
Sysfan 4 seems to be closer to the one that's on the back of the computer.
That's fine, yeah. You don't have to be in order, so you can use any of them as long as it's just not pump fan.
HD audio, the F panel, and the one with the blue.
The blue cable. So that's the USB 3. So the good news about these cables is they're pretty straightforward, pretty easy to hook up. They're just only can really attach one way. The USB has a little prong in the middle, so it can only go one way. The HD audio has, if you look at the connector, one of the pins is actually missing on it. So if you look at the connector and then you look at the motherboard, you'll actually see which way it faces because one of those pins is going to be missing. I'm just wanting to verify these ports here. I'm pretty sure I know which ones they are. I think it's this one and this one, but I just want to make sure that we're using the right ones here. So we want to figure out where these wires were. We're going to have to run them to. So I just want to see which ports these are. JAUD is your audio connector. So that's going to be the HD audio. You can see that the missing pin is on top. Make the connector match up the same way.
Okay. All right, and JFP1 is the other one that we're going to go into?
Yeah, it looks like it. So if you look at the connector, right, it looks like this one that I have on the screen, right? It's 4 pins and then 5 pins.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's going to be the same thing. So you can see how it's pinned out here. If you care about this at all, like I said, for people who have older cases or don't have this connector, every one of these connectors would just be a 2-pin connector. There would be like 4 or 5 of them. And so what happens is now they kind of give you this connector where they're all just built into one little block. So you don't have to worry about all these little connectors. Is it on the right way? They simplified it. So now, instead of having one connector for the hard disk drive light, one connector for the power light, one connector for the switch, for the reset, one connector for the power switch, all you got now is just one. And then JFP2 is if you had a speaker. I don't think the motherboard you bought came with a speaker. What they do now is they don't even put the speakers on the motherboard because they're a waste of money. So they literally give you like a little wire piece and you plug it into the motherboard if you want the motherboard to make little beeping sounds when it turns on and stuff. So that blue cable is going to go right along the side, the side that's closest to Kody. There's like a little red port right in the middle along the edge there where the 24-pin power connector is. It's going to go right in there. It's basically right on this edge. So I think that's it. I mean, we don't have anything else to plug in, right?
Right.
I'm asking you, is there anything else hanging there that needs to get plugged in somewhere?
Nope, that's it.
All right, so the hard drive's going to come in. We got to mount that under the case. We got to put into the cables. And then the power supply is going to come. We got to mount that and the cable up to the motherboard. And then we're done.